And we talked about women's sport just now, and I know you've had previous guests on your podcast talking about women's sport. I mean, I used to really, with the Telegraph years ago, was very involved in advancing, certainly around the time of, I think it was Athens 2004, when Dame Kelly Holmes won her 2 gold medals. Yep. There was a big drive at the time to keep girls involved in sport in their teens. Don't make them wear little skirts in sports. There was no need for it anymore. Hair dryers. This sounds really kind of banal, but hair dryers in the dressing room so they could do their makeup afterwards.
Ant cares loads about his hair, don't you?
Yeah, well, listen, we're hair guys. We're all hair guys here today. But there's such a rich tapestry of things to be involved in, and basically, bottom line is, I've always loved sports. Probably if I hadn't had kids younger, I would have been a foreign correspondent, but I had kids in my early 20s who've now given me grandkids, so I'm quite advanced in all that process. And sport reflects life, reflects spirituality, reflects people, reflects lessons in life. And so, growing up with probably wanted to captain England at cricket and play rugby, always been into martial arts. Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee were both heroes for me. They'd have been on my wall posters when I was 11, 12. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So, it was natural to get into fight sports, and I seemed to have a bent for it. And here I am 33 years later. I think the first time I got involved in boxing was like late 80s, 1990, York Hall. I'm still doing it. So for me as well, just to finish, I think there's a thing about whatever you're involved in, you always, the imposter syndrome always comes up and drives you. That, am I really meant to be doing this? And it's questioned more and more by social media these days. But you just got to stay true to yourself. And when you bump into people in life, they go, "Oh, I enjoy that you do," or you get the reality in terms of real energy from people. There's my little spiel.
You were like a twinkle in someone's eye, Ant, when Gareth was already reporting on boxing.
I say spunk bubble.
Oh,
yeah, little bit more
twinkle in the eye. Yeah.
Difference between you and you. Gareth, you mentioned about the sport. You said it earlier yourself, and I made a note of this. You said you're a storyteller. So what is it about stories that fascinate you?
Luckily, I've got the gift of the gab.
That you do.
I have a voice.
Genuinely, you become the boxing and MMA voice of a generation. You obviously been involved with boxing for 30 years, and also you're like the voice of MMA that's kind of like made it become more mainstream in the UK. So congratulations to that, sir. But the storytelling aspect of it, like you're not the fighter, but you tell their stories, which is arguably almost as important. What is it about that fascinates yourself?
Well, I think for a start, if you take boxing and mixed martial arts from any other sport, they are the most peculiar. Maybe as peculiar as darts, yeah? Which, I go back to the days when they used to drink beer and vodka, jockey on the ocky with a beer belly.
Bobby George days.
Bobby George, all those guys with his 10 rings. That's as weird a sport as boxing or MMA.
In what respect?
Because it's not a sport in some ways, it's a calling. Like, to be able to stand there for 5 hours a day throwing these little metal spikes at a dartboard, you've got to have a screw loose.
But how is it weird in terms of boxing?
Same as in boxing.
Gotcha.
Because
you've got a screw loose, is what he was saying.
No, you've definitely got a screw loose.
I mean,
you've got to.
I get for boxing, but darts, really? Screw loose for darts?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
I'm just throwing it out there. And look at that 16-year-old recently coming into the darts.
Yeah, look littler.
Littler.
God, what a talent he is.
What a talent, but he looks about 55, doesn't he? He looks like grandfather already. But not meaning to be rude, I found you very inspiring as well.
He's going to change a generation of darts players.
Totally.
Yeah, his Instagram following, everything. He's like, the entirety of darts has gone through a seismic shift just by his arrival.
Yeah, but all I'm worried about is the youngsters getting online and watching the YouTube clips of Eric Bristow, Bobby George, and people like Jockey Wilson going, it's fine. Go down the pub for half the day, go to the darts board for half the day.
He could really be a change. He could like get in the gym, get in shape, and change everyone's opinion of darts. And people don't see it as a sport; they see it as a game
Pastime.
player.
Yeah.
But he could really, like, you know, it's a massive weight on a young man, on a boy's shoulders. But he could really be a generational change for an age-old sport.
Absolutely, but I'm cutting on the darts chat now because we could go down and talk about that for hours. But where the two sports, where the fight sports and boxing and darts diverges, is it's unnatural to fight unless you're put in the position where you have to. Now, to answer your question, one of the reasons why there's a narrative arc to fighting is that I believe that I don't necessarily believe in the future after we've gone, when we're no longer. But I do believe in the DNA in us going back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, because those are the survivors that had us. Spunk in the eye, whatever you were calling it earlier.
Spunk in the eye. That's something very
Spunk in a
different.
bubble. Spunk in a
That's
bubble.
very, very
Not my
different.
expression. Trackers. Spunk in a bubble, or whatever you were calling it at the time. You go back through the DNA, and there's a reason why we're here, is because we're from survivors. And I think the tiny percentage of people that fight for a living represent the people that are fighting for survival in life. And that's where the storyline hits so many people and inspires so many people.
Yeah.
Now, if I can get my mother, a great-grandmother, or I can get many great-grandmothers and grandmothers wanting to follow your story, as we did during the Olympic Games in London in 2012, because of the harrowing things you were going through at the time with your mother's illness, but still wanting to compete for Great Britain and winning your bronze medal, which I'll never forget, because it was a special games. You'll never forget it. Those stories reach beyond sports. They're bigger than sport.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it. I'm about to interview Keyshawn Davis tonight, a rising lightweight star in America. There is something inspiring about that guy and how he wants to change his community in Norfolk, Virginia. There's inspiring things around fighters that I see all the time, from the very top to the very bottom, to guys that were being bullied in school, or were in gangs in council estates, or gangs anywhere, but were in places where they suddenly went to the gym to think, I need to protect myself physically, or I need to get discipline, and their life changed. And I just think that's amazing. You are the modern gladiators, people who are showing us how you fight for freedom.
Very wonderful thing to say, Gareth, and thank you for including me in that. And I think you are the modern...
Oh, shucks, I'm a modern gladiator fighting for freedom. Next question.
But you're fighting for the freedom of women's sport, aren't you?
I'm fighting for the freedom of a lot of people. I'm actually fighting for the fact that I believe that most of the people who through birthright get platforms in life aren't the greatest role models that we could have. And yet the people who are the greatest role models often don't understand how to connect with the people that they can inspire. So I see my calling as being a bridge between those ordinary people capable of extraordinary things and everyone else who they can inspire and, you know, make a positive change to the world through.
Yeah, that was nice. That was lovely.